Carl Jung spent decades studying why intelligent, self-aware people repeatedly destroy their own lives. He discovered something disturbing. Empaths don't attract narcissists by accident. They are psychologically programmed to seek them out. And the reason why will make you question everything you think you know about yourself. I'm going to show you the exact psychological mechanism Jung identified, why traditional empath advice keeps you trapped in this cycle, and the one integration practice that actually breaks the pattern. But first, you need to understand what Jung really meant by the shadow, because it's not what you think. When Jung talked about the shadow, he wasn't talking about your dark side or some evil part of yourself that needs to be controlled. That's pop psychology nonsense that completely misses the point. The shadow is everything you've rejected about yourself. Everything you were taught was unacceptable. Everything you had to suppress to be loved, to be safe, to survive childhood. For most empaths, this includes anger, selfishness, the ability to say no, the capacity to let others fail without rescuing them. Jung said the shadow isn't good or bad, it's unconscious. And here's the critical part. Whatever remains unconscious doesn't disappear. It operates in the dark, making decisions for you, attracting situations and people that force you to confront what you've rejected. When I first studied Jung, I thought shadow work meant acknowledging my dark side, like I was some kind of villain origin story. I was completely wrong. The shadow isn't darkness, it's disowned power. And for empaths, that disowned power is exactly what narcissists can sense from a mile away. Now here's where it gets disturbing. Most empaths were conditioned in childhood to be emotional caretakers. Maybe you had a parent who was depressed, angry, or emotionally unavailable. Maybe you learned early that your value came from fixing other people's problems, managing their emotions, keeping the peace. Jung called this the wounded healer archetype, the person who learns to heal others as a way to avoid their own wounds, the person who becomes so skilled at reading emotional states that they lose touch with their own needs entirely. This is the programming. I am valuable when I'm needed. I am safe when I'm useful. I am loved when I sacrifice myself. And here's what makes this so insidious. Empaths genuinely believe they're helping. They think their ability to absorb others' pain, to tolerate bad behavior, to see potential in broken people is a gift. It's not a gift, it's a wound pretending to be a superpower. The empath's shadow contains 3 critical elements they've suppressed. First, healthy aggression. The anger that says, this is unacceptable. The boundaries that protect your energy. The capacity to be what others might call selfish. Second, authentic self-preservation. The instinct that says, I matter too. The ability to prioritize your needs without guilt or shame. Third, the willingness to let others fail. To watch someone make destructive choices and not intervene. To accept that you cannot save people from themselves. These aren't character flaws. These are survival mechanisms that empaths had to suppress to be safe in dysfunctional environments. But here's the paradox that traps empaths. By suppressing these qualities, they become magnets for the exact people who will exploit their absence. And that's where narcissists enter the picture. Jung had a phrase that should terrify every empath. What you don't integrate, you attract as fate. Narcissists don't consciously target empaths. It's not a calculated hunt, it's unconscious recognition. The narcissist's psyche senses the empath's unintegrated shadow the way sharks sense blood in water. The empath broadcasts, I need to be needed. I will tolerate anything to maintain connection. I believe I can fix broken people. The narcissist receives, here is someone who will never leave, who will absorb my rage, who will take responsibility for my emotions, who will sacrifice themselves to maintain the relationship. This is shadow attraction, 2 incomplete psyches finding each other, not out of love but out of unconscious compulsion. The empath needs external validation because they've rejected self-worth. The narcissist needs external supply because they've rejected their own emptiness. The empath says, I can heal you. The narcissist says, finally, someone who understands me. Both are lying to themselves and each other. You've seen this pattern. The empath enters the relationship thinking they just need love and understanding. 6 months later, they're walking on eggshells, managing the narcissist's moods, making excuses for unacceptable behavior. The empath thinks, if I just love them enough, they'll change. The narcissist thinks, if they really loved me, they'd accept me as I am. And here's why traditional advice fails. People tell empaths to set boundaries, to practice self-care, to learn to say no, but boundaries are external solutions to internal problems. You can't set a boundary on the outside when you haven't integrated the shadow material on the inside. The empath who hasn't integrated their anger can't maintain boundaries because boundaries require the willingness to disappoint others, to be seen as mean, to risk rejection. The empath who hasn't integrated self-preservation can't say no because saying no triggers the childhood wound that says, if I'm not useful, I'm not valuable. The empath who hasn't integrated the capacity to let others fail can't stop rescuing because watching someone suffer triggers unbearable guilt. Jung understood this. He said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The pattern doesn't break with better boundaries, it breaks with integration. So let's talk about what that actually means.
Integration is not healing. It's not fixing yourself. It's not becoming a better person. Integration is making the unconscious conscious. It's reclaiming the parts of yourself you rejected. It's accepting that you are whole, not broken, not damaged, not in need of repair. For empaths, there are 3 shadow elements that must be integrated. First, suppressed anger. Not rage, not violence, healthy aggression. The part of you that says, this is unacceptable, and means it. The part that can set a boundary and feel no guilt when someone crosses it. Here's what this looks like. A narcissist pushes your boundary. The unintegrated empath thinks, maybe I wasn't clear enough. Maybe I'm being too sensitive. Maybe I should give them another chance. The integrated empath thinks, I was clear. They chose to disrespect my boundary. This relationship is over. No explanation, no second guessing, no guilt. Second, authentic selfishness, not narcissism, self-preservation. The capacity to prioritize your needs without shame. The ability to say, I matter too, and actually believe it. The unintegrated empath cancels their plans to help someone in crisis, even though that person has been in crisis every week for 6 months. The integrated empath says, I have plans, I'm not available, and doesn't feel guilty about it. Third, the capacity to let others fail. This is the hardest one. The ability to watch someone make destructive choices and not intervene. To accept that you cannot save people from themselves. The unintegrated empath sees someone they love self-destructing and thinks, I have to do something. If I don't help, I'm abandoning them. The integrated empath thinks, their choices are not my responsibility. My job is not to save them. My job is to maintain my own integrity. Now here's the practice Jung actually recommended for shadow integration. It's called shadow dialogue. Find a quiet space. Journal or speak out loud. Address your shadow directly. Shadow, what have I rejected about myself? What anger am I suppressing? What selfishness am I denying? What part of me am I refusing to accept? Then listen, not with your conscious mind, with your intuition. Let the shadow respond. Write down what comes up, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it contradicts your self-image.
This isn't comfortable. Integration means accepting that you've been unconsciously participating in your own destruction, that you've been choosing relationships that confirm your childhood wound, that you've been calling self-sacrifice love when it was actually fear. But here's what happens when you integrate. The pattern breaks. Not because you've learned better boundaries or practiced more self-care, but because you're no longer broadcasting the signal that narcissists recognize. You're no longer seeking external validation because you've reclaimed internal worth. You're no longer tolerating bad behavior because you've integrated healthy aggression. You're no longer rescuing others because you've accepted that everyone's journey is their own. Jung called this individuation, becoming whole, not perfect, whole. So here's what we've covered. Jung's shadow isn't your dark side, it's your disowned power. Empaths were conditioned to suppress anger, selfishness, and the capacity to let others fail. Narcissists unconsciously detect these suppressed elements and exploit them. The pattern doesn't break with boundaries, it breaks with integration. The shift isn't asking, why do I keep attracting narcissists? The shift is asking, what am I refusing to integrate? What anger am I suppressing? What selfishness am I denying? What part of myself am I rejecting? This isn't awakening. This isn't spiritual bypassing. This is psychological survival. If you're ready to do actual shadow work, not surface-level self-help, but the deep integration that Jung outlined, subscribe to this channel. Your shadow isn't your enemy. It's the part of you that's been waiting to come home.